It's a Wednesday edition. It's orange and blue today. Cecil Lammy, Andrew Mason, Denver Broncos conversation, and a conversation, Mace, that you got to have with Mel Kiper today.
Yeah. Mel Kiper Jr. dropped his last mock draft earlier this week, and today was the day that he faced the media, as it were. Didn't really face the media. It was a conference call, but answered questions from media from around the country. I was one of them, and I didn't really ask him specifically about his mock pick of Tetairoa McMillan to the Broncos at number 20. He's been pretty consistent saying Tetairoa McMillan, Omarion Hampton. He had Omarion Hampton going to the Cowboys, Tetairoa McMillan going to the Broncos. He's been consistent saying that he could flip one or the other, but he said something early in the conference call that I wanted to follow up on, because he was asked about Omarion Hampton to the Cowboys and talked about how Sean Payton could be looking at Omarion Hampton to pounce on him, with the Broncos looking at running backs. Of course, George Payton saying at the league meetings not too long ago that the Broncos are going to be taking a running back in this draft. So the other thing with Mel Kiper Jr. in his mock draft, he mocks Quinshon Judkins of Ohio State to the Broncos in round 2. So running back. We're talking about running backs the way we talked about quarterbacks last year.
Right.
It's the way it is this year. So what I asked Mel Kiper Jr. was, it got me thinking. Sean Payton has a history of trading up in round 1 when he sees somebody he really wants. He's done that multiple times in his drafts. George Payton likes to move down, believes in the more darts theory. Sean Payton likes to go up. You have these competing philosophies. So what I asked Mel Kiper Jr. was about kind of knowing this. Is Omarion Hampton the type of player that Sean Payton might move up for? Also, given where running backs stack up in this draft, which we all know it's a very deep running back class. Here's my question and Mel Kiper Jr.'s answer, and we're going to dive into a lot of what he said here as OBT continues. My question and Mel Kiper Jr.'s answer about Sean Payton potentially moving up in the draft. You mentioned Sean Payton earlier on, sitting at 20 for Hampton, but Payton's got a history of trading up if he really wants a guy. So with Hampton, is his skill set and potential worthy of a trade up, especially given the quality and depth of running backs in this year's class?
Yeah, Andrew, it's a great question, because there's a lot of depth, but depth of quality is where we differ on that, because some of these backs are going to be serviceable. They may not be stars. And I think the stars that you know are Ashton Genty and Omarion Hampton. Travion Henderson's going to be a really good accent piece, because he had the durability issues when he was the main guy. Quinshon Judkins, another back who's going to go in the second round possibly, helped him out coming from Ole Miss and took some of that workload away from Henderson, allowed him to stay healthy all year, right? And be a key entity and allowed them to win a national title. So Travion for the Bears at 39 or 41 would look good. Judkins to Denver in the second round. That's where Sean Payton has to decide. Are some of those second round running backs, are we good enough with them, feel strong enough about them to wait for them, or do we need to go get Hampton, who's a cut above? Okay, if they feel there's a significant difference from Hampton to the third running back, whether it's Henderson, Judkins, Caleb Johnson at Iowa, whoever it may be, then they have to look at Hampton if he's there at 20. As you say, do they want to trade up? We'll see. But also look at a wide receiver at some point. That's why, Tetairoa McMillan, if he were there, would make sense. Another weapon for Bo. Or, like I say, take the running back. And you could really flip McMillan. I know a lot of people think Dallas could take McMillan. Fine. Dallas takes McMillan. There's a chance Hampton could be there at Denver. And I think Hampton would be, to really help, you get a complete back. He had 2 years of great productivity, even with Drake. Lost Drake, but he still produced big time, okay? So even though they knew who to key on, the opponent knew who was going to be the key guy, and it was Hampton, yet he went above and beyond what he did the previous year, and his average per carry was the same. Touchdowns were the same. So if they feel that he's the guy, then certainly if he's there 20 and he gets past the Cowboys, I'd be surprised if they passed him up.
Significant things said there from Mel Kiper, and Hampton compared to the third running back. And I love what he said about with Drake and without Drake, because when you have a franchise quarterback or a first-round quarterback, that's going to open up your rushing lanes. And when you don't, Mace, that's going to close your rushing lanes, yet Hampton still produced.
Yeah, and it's a completely different dynamic because North Carolina in 2023, defenses are trying to stop Drake May first. Carolina in 2024, they're trying to stop Hampton first.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, in some ways more productive in 24 and was at least as efficient in 24 with defenses geared to stop him. And certainly an offense that was messier in 24 than 23. Overall, it didn't affect Omarion Hampton's productivity. So that says a lot as well, that they, he was the load bearing wall for Carolina last year. And he was still productive. Just like when we look at Ashton Genty and the critique of him, he didn't go against great competition, but you look at the Penn State film and you see the stacked boxes and he's still productive. That should answer any questions anybody has. That's why he's got the goods. That's why he's going to go early in the draft.
And that's why he could be the total package. Something Sean Payton is looking for. But I like the way that Mel says, in the second round running backs, are we good enough with these guys?
Yeah.
Because you will be part of your answer, not your complete answer. If you get Hampton, you could get a UDFA running back or a sixth round running back like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, our guy. If you get Quinshon Judkins, you may be tempted to go back to the well with Rashard Smith, Bashal Tutin, any of these other guys, Jaden Blue, these, kind of different backs. You may be tempted to double up in rounds 2 and rounds 4 compared to round 1 and round 6.
Or going back to what Sean Payton said last week when I asked him about the traits he's looking for when he got to the end of his answer, talking about the running backs that he had on hand.
Mm-hmm.
Are they part of the solution as well?
They're more part of the solution if you don't get Hampton.
Easily. If you don't get Hampton or Genty in round 1, then you're looking at one of those running backs being a 1A, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Still being very involved. If you get Hampton or Genty, then the best, barring injury, that anybody that you have on hand is a 2. It's a clear separation. Maybe not for the first carry of OTAs, but certainly by the first carry of the season.
Yeah. We should see that change if it's a Hampton there. Total package, and then what I always say, the influence. If Hampton's out there, he's no tell. If you do go with Judkins, who we like, and Blake Watson as the number 2, there's going to be some tells, Mace. Even though both players can do both. Judkins can catch and Watson can run. But there's still going to be a tell based on your down and distance and the package of player in the game.
It's the issue with Jaleel McLaughlin, right? Especially as a rookie, not quite as much in his second year.
Sure.
But it was what held him back as a rookie. Just him being on the field was a tell. I mean, we had that stat that we got into in November of 2023 that if he was on the field 70% of the time, he was getting the ball. It was a declaration of influence just with him stepping on the field.
Here he goes.
And that's why he became less efficient, because the moment he checked into the game, opponents are like, it's probably going to 38, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Key on him.
Key on him.
Yes.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke. Yeah, key on him. And with Hampton, the great thing is like he doesn't require space to make big plays. And I've talked to TD about this many times, Mace. I probably brought it up on the show. One of the best attributes that I look for in running back is the ability to create space. Some do it with power, some do it with speed, some do it with juke moves. I think Hampton could do it with all three.
Yeah. If you've got a lot of clubs in your bag, and that's, to me, that's what separates the two running backs at the top of this class from the rest of the group, is clubs in the bag. And that goes to declaration of influence. How many ways can they beat you? Mm-hmm. Can they beat, can they beat you in the pass game? Can they beat you between the tackles? Can they, can they beat you in the pass game? Can they beat you on a wheel route? Can they beat you in the screen game? And what's their capability to grow in pass pro? Because none of these guys are elite when they come into the league in pass pro. You're asking them to grow, because it's not just technique, it's the ability to ID blitzes as they come. That's something that you have to grow and adjust to. And that's where the mental part of it comes in. That's where you've got to identify which players are going to be able to, have that sort of growth in terms of studying a playbook, being able to quickly react. That's where you've got to get a feel for what their processor is. It's kind of similar to a quarterback, right? You want to kind of get a feel for their processor. The other thing that's sort of interesting is you've got some running backs the Broncos are bringing in for 30 visits. We know, of course, that the Broncos had formals with a lot of these running backs at the combine. What do you think the significance of the specific running backs that are coming in for 30 visits is compared to the ones that they just had formals with in Indianapolis?
Yeah, 30 visits. If you include Caleb Johnson, I believe. Yes, Mace, is that correct? Quinshon Judkins.
Quinshon Judkins has a 30 visit. Yes.
Yeah. So those are big guys that they want to see how do you identify things, right? Yeah. If we go back to Marshall Faulk, and I don't mean to always go back there, but just it's Sean Payton. It's the early clues as to what Sean Payton wants out of a back, and you can see it in Alvin Kamara. But Marshall Faulk, one of his best assets as a smaller back, 205, whatever he was listed at. Even Peyton Manning said the 1 year he had him with the Colts, he was like, that's like another coach on the field. I'll go a different size back, sometimes a much different size back, and CJ Anderson. Also Peyton Manning. What did he say about CJ? And CJ, to his credit, said, when Peyton got here, I knew I had to be the smartest guy on the field, not name Peyton Manning. Yeah. So I think with these 30s, you can really get in the head of these players and see where they're at when it comes to identifying defensive packages.
Yeah. And you have DJ Giddens, who's had a visit. You have Jaden Blue, who's had a visit as well.
Okay.
So the one thing that we don't know quite the detail that we haven't figured out yet, we don't know where the Broncos have gone for visits outside their facility. That's the piece of the puzzle that we haven't quite gotten to. The way that, like last year, we didn't, when they had the visits away from the facility, that's what we don't quite have yet. And the other thing with the 30s is, sometimes you're doing, sometimes on the back end, you're doing some recruiting, right? You're like, okay, some of the guys on the back end, you're talking about undrafted players, perhaps you're trying to, figure out, okay, who might you bring in? But those guys, those running backs that they're having 30 visits with, these are not undrafted caliber players. These are guys that are going to go in the draft at some point. Yes. That's another interesting aspect of this. So, and also sometimes on the 30 visits, it's okay, we're not quite sure. We're trying to kind of peel back the layers a bit. Sometimes in those formals of the combine, if the player aces the test in those 15 minutes, you're like, okay, we're good. We know.
Right. You don't need to see more.
Yeah. Sometimes the 30 is, okay, we're not quite sure. We need to kind of do another check here.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe you want to have two guys, because let's talk about who the 30s are.
Yeah.
If it is Judkins and Johnson, we can solidly say those look like second round picks.
Yes.
Maybe someone takes Caleb in the late first. Whatever. Don't at me, bro. But it looks like if you have a tie between those two in the second round, you want to know. There's your 30 visits. And then Giddens and Blue, to me, would be more day 3 picks. I encourage everyone on April 9th here to get Dane Brugler's Beast. It was released today.
Yes.
And it's always refreshing, Mace, because I love Devin Neal, right? And our guy Chad Ryder breaking my heart when he's like a 5th round pick. And I was like, I'd take him in the 3rd. I did see Dane Brugler, who I consider the best draft analyst there is. Dane had him with a 4th round grade. So, I always do my stuff. I don't pay attention to what everyone else is doing until I'm done. But it's nice to see, hey, what's Matt Waldman think of Taj Brooks? What does Dane Brugler think of Devin Neal? So the Beast is out. And if you're a draft fan, it is a must read.
Well, the thing that I do is we're now at the point where I've got enough rankings, including my own, where I create my composite big board that I go off of as I get to the draft. And the thing I use on the 3 days of the draft that I say, okay, who's my best available is I use a composite that's got anywhere from 8 to 10 sets of rankings, including Brugler's, including Chad's, etc., including mine. So, and I just weigh them all equally and I do that mainly because I'm not a wisdom of crowds person, but it's more like no one person has the answers.
Right. And everyone sees the draft differently. Yeah. Kind of a little side conversation. I remember talking to Chad years ago. Like Texas versus the Nation years ago, where it was like, we can watch the same player and see different traits.
Yeah.
So it's not even just like he's a hit, he's not a hit. It's like I saw him, have better balance after contact, but I saw the footwork that required him to have that glancing blow rather than a direct blow.
Yeah.
So it's like two different things of the same quality.
There's a 30 visit going on this week that I think is really intriguing for the Broncos. And I wanted to ask you about it. It's not running back. So it's a little bit of a deviation here on the show. The Harold Fanning Jr. 30 visit. What do you make of that?
Kind of get excited about it because with Harold, it would be like, can you be an H-back? Can you be a fullback? And the answer is yes. Yes, the answer is 1000% yes. His gait, ironically, or not ironically, whatever, reminds a lot of people of Antonio Gates. It doesn't mean he's going to be Gates, but like just kind of the way he runs is unorthodox. And maybe that's why people say it doesn't look like he's running fast. Well, he is. And obviously incredibly productive at Bowling Green. So I love it. And I love it because of the ways you could use him. And maybe it's not as sexy, fantasy football, Terrence Ferguson, Colston Loveland, that type of sexy, but it's just like a chess piece of Harold Fanning.
The ceiling on him is extraordinarily high.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, the day 2 tight ends that have the highest ceiling are Fannin and Elijah Arroyo.
Okay.
And the beauty of having Evan Engram in the house is you can take the higher ceiling guy who doesn't have to be ready right away. Like, you can work him in. He can play 10 to 15 snaps a game early. He can be your 3rd or 4th tight end. You don't have to get him a lot of snaps early. It's okay. You have that luxury. You can play the long game. I think when I think of Fannin, I think of what he can be a year or 2 out. Because for all the, for all the struggles that he had Senior Bowl week, and it wasn't a great week for him, but there were a couple of moments, man, where he just, we're down the seam. He just shook the linebacker, and it's just like, ooh, like I think it was on Wednesday that when they were doing one-on-ones, it was like, I was looking for a moment. It was like, okay, there was that one route that I don't know if you recall. It's like that one route that he had. And I was like, okay, I wanted to see it. I needed to see one moment from him, just to know that he had it. It's the kind of thing you can do. The other thing that kind of and it comes to running back, comes to tight end, all of this should all come back to what helps Bo Nix most. And that's why I want to play a clip here from Mel Kiper Jr. today. He was answering a question about J.J. McCarthy and how what the Vikings should do in their draft should be tailored around what helps McCarthy. But he comes back to an example from the 90s. I like to cite the example of how the Packers draft, they always believe in, when Ron Wolf was there, they always believed in stacking late round quarterbacks, even though they had Brett Favre. But there's something else that Ron Wolf and Mike Holmgren did that I believe in, and it's something that I think is wise for the Broncos. And they were talking, and Mel Kiper Jr. was talking about McCarthy, but I think this applies to the Broncos as well. Take a listen.
I think it was going back to Ron Wolf and with Holmgren. Everything we're going to do here as an organization is to make Brett Favre great once they traded for him. And a lot of organizations don't do that, but they usually do it for the ones they handpick. Once they handpick a player, they got to be all in.
They handpicked Bo Nix.
Yes, they did.
All in on Bo Nix.
Yes, they are.
So to tie it back, we'll tie this first back to the original topic. Sean Payton says two things that support a quarterback, a young quarterback the most, are defense and a running game. Well, you got the defense up to a high level for most of last year, and then you bring in Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw this offseason. You've worked on the defense. Running game, if you can get Omarion Hampton, you've done that. And then you work on a target. The interior triangle, Sean Payton always talks about, right? Interior targets, Joker type of targets. You bring in Evan Engram. Omarion Hampton, certainly not just a terrific running back, but an interior target, fits that interior triangle. Someone like a Harold Fanning Jr., what can he grow into as an interior target in that interior triangle?
Learning from Evan Engram.
Yeah. How can that help Bo Nix? What can that do for him as an interior target? And if things don't work out for you to get Omarion Hampton, if you can't pull that off, what is a good consolation prize? Is it not T-Mac, Tedero McMillan as a big target on the outside?
We'll have to dive further into that, Mace, because I have questions, not about T-Mac, but just who's going to be there. And I like the start. If you had Hampton, and let me just say this, you're all in, right? Mel just said it. You got to be all in.
All in.
You're not all in.
Bo.
You're not all in letting the draft fall to you. Point blank, period. And I would tell George that if I had an audience with George. If you're going to be all in on Bo, that doesn't mean sitting at 20. Because the guy that you may really, really want, there might be a running back at 10 and 12.
Pittsburgh's interested in Omarion Hampton, too.
Mm-hmm.
You think Pittsburgh might jump you?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Even if Omarion Hampton gets past Dallas, you may not be able to sit there and wait for him to be at 20. You might have to move up a few picks. How much is it worth to you to get that guy, that running back, that guy that transforms things for you? Transforms things for Bo. But it's all about Bo. What supports Bo?
Moving up, getting your best back possible, getting a special back.
Yeah.
As Hampton can be. And that's nothing against insert back's name, because everybody loves somebody, which is great. This is a great back for that. But as Mel Kiper said, there's quality, there's depth of quality. This draft has depth, but not depth of quality.
How many wins is Omarion Hampton worth for the Broncos this year, if he's a Bronco?
10 to 12. He gets you from 10 to 12, so 2.
So he's worth 2 wins.
Yes.
You think?
Yeah, that's all in. All in means moving up.
Okay. If he's worth 2 wins alone by himself compared to another running back, Is that not worth a move up?
1,000%.
I mean, that's maybe the difference between being in the playoffs and not being in the playoffs. Or it might be the difference between a 5 seed and a 7 seed. Or it might be the difference between winning the division and being at home, because 12 might win you the division.
Yep.
Imagine that, the difference between a home game and having to go on the road for 3 weeks.
With the Mile High Magic that returned last year with Bo, think of how that would be. And I always think of this. Jim Rohn says it, R-O-H-N, Rohn, motivational speaker from the 70s. He was like, don't ask for things to be easier. Ask for you to be better.
Ooh.
Don't ask for things to fall to you. Go be better. You're not good enough to sit there at 20 and be like, whoever. You need a Hampton. I think we solved the puzzle, Mace. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But if you're all in, if you're truly all in on Bo, you do what you need to do.
I think you just made the argument for it, my friend.
I hope George is watching. George is going to do George things, but Sean, if he falls in love, we got to wait because we don't know yet, and we won't know really till draft night.
Yeah. But he might love a back in the 3rd round. Who's to say? But if he loves Omarion Hampton, if he loves Omarion Hampton, you got to move up. That's the thing. If he loves him, you got to do what it takes to get him.
Mm-hmm. We will be there and watching with great interest. All right, Mace, let's wrap up today's program. But before we do that, we need some help on YouTube. How do folks do that?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you never miss vid. That's right. Remote high five or remote fist bump there. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammy saying thanks for watching OBT's BFD. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty,